Добродојдете во новиот подкаст Чекор напред со М6. Подкаст во кој преку разговори со истакнати личности од индустријата и бизнисот се обидуваме да дадеме нови перспективи, нови погледи, други поинакви видувања на процесите кои секоја успешна компанија би требало да ги спроведува. Денеска со нас е господја Линда Найман, која е експерт за креативно лидерство и иновации и со која денеска ќе поразговараме за една од клучните теми, да речеме, во новиот менеджмент период што доаѓа, а тоа е креативноста, иновациите и лидерството. Welcome, Miss Linda Naiman. Thank you for being here. As I already mentioned in Macedonian, leadership, innovation and technology are main topics in the new management era. And since technology seems to be most tangible, let's say, part of these three, that people can see technology or can feel it. On other hand, innovation and leadership is something more considered like soft skills, more intangible, and it's more difficult to be delivered, let's say, and accepted by the companies. But in the meantime, the past years, you develop a remarkable career in creative leadership and innovation. And you combine very well these two, let's say, two very important topics and characteristics of successful companies, which is leadership and innovation in creative leadership courses that you are giving around a lot of companies like Cisco, Dell, United Nations. So please share with us how you shift to this from, because you studied fine arts, how you go from fine arts to, let's say, these leadership programs that you are expert in.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction and for inviting me here. And so I always wanted to be an artist when I was growing up. And luckily, my parents encouraged me to be an artist. So I went to California College of the Arts to study fine arts, painting, visual arts, but also it was a multidisciplinary program. So I also got to study things like race relations, sociology, anthropology, feminist studies, all kinds of things. So that fed my curiosity. And then later I went back to school again because I realized I might not make a lot of money being an artist. So I went back to school. I went to Emily Carr in Vancouver and studied graphic design. So I made a living as a graphic designer and illustrator for, 18 years or something, and worked with top companies in Vancouver. But after the 10-year mark, I got bored because I made a goal. I made a pact with myself. Okay, I'll be a designer for 10 years, then I'll be rich, and then I'll be an artist. And at the 10-year mark, I actually won a lot of awards for my work from my professional association, from my peers. And my passion after that just dropped. And if your passion for something drops, then that's really bad because it's really hard to perform. And then I also became creatively blocked. Mm-hmm. So I realized that in all the 6 years I went to art and design school, nobody taught me how to be creative. They just tell you to do it. And also at the school I went to in California, they taught us to experiment and explore, and that was more important than coming up with something perfect. So they didn't grade us on performance so much, but on process, on thinking. And at the time, it was an environment where there was a lot of protest going on in society and in the school, and they encouraged it. They encouraged us to question the status quo, and they said, you are an artist, that means you can do anything. So I went home to my father and I said, I am an artist. That means I can do anything. And he goes, oh my God, you're right. That made me feel really good. So anyway, when I got to that 10-year mark and I was creatively blocked, I started to study creativity as a process. And one of the first books I studied or read on creativity was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And it's a 12-week self-guided study on overcoming your blocks to creativity and so on. And when I finished that, I had an epiphany, which was to not only liberate creativity in myself and make life and work a work of art, but also to help other people liberate creativity and make life and work a work of art. And so that's how I got started. So I started, like Apple Computer, I started in my garage. And I invited friends to come to a creativity workshop. And then I attended a lecture on on livelihood as opposed to work, as opposed to having a job. It's having a livelihood, taught by a professor at the University of Michigan, and he was giving this talk at the University of British Columbia. And that inspired me to write an essay called Creativity and the Meaning of Work. That got then I told UBC about it, and then the professor, because I said, he inspired me to write this essay and I'd like him to read it. And they said, we want to read it too. The next thing I knew, I was invited to give a workshop. So that was my first professional experience, giving a creativity workshop. Then that article got published in the World Business Academy Journal on perspectives in business and global change. Gorbachev has an essay in there too, the same issue as me. So then I was invited by Miha Pagachnik, a Slovenian cultural ambassador, to come to his arts and business conference at the Castle Borel in Slovenia. And then I met all kinds of people, thought leaders, bankers, professors, consultants, musicians, artists, all gathered together to explore art, leadership, and related to business and government and society. And from there, I was invited to work with somebody and his team at BP in New York. And then I found when you work with one global company, that begets another and then another. And so then I co-authored a book called Orchestrating Collaboration at Work, which is all about using the arts to learn about leadership, teamwork, and collaboration. So as I was exploring creativity and my role in it, I was also going back to my roots as an artist and as a designer, and I was looking for connections. What is the connection between an artist and a leader? Turns out quite a lot. And it turns out all kinds of people have written about it. So there's been a lot of books over the years published on that topic, and it's a topic of study in universities in Europe. And so I drew upon some of that research and what people like Warren Bennis have said about leadership. And I've tracked over the years what are leaders in industry talking about, and then how does that connect? What's the connection with art? And then how can we use art to inform leadership? So, and to inform creativity and innovation. And then later when design thinking became popular, I brought in design thinking because that's part of my background too. Although as a designer, we didn't actually use that formula for design thinking that IDEO made popular or Stanford made popular. But it's a great problem-solving methodology, and it's great for helping business people make sense of creativity and innovation.
It's very interesting and to hear how you evolve from graphic designer and you challenge actually status quo. In that time, you want something new, and then things happen one after another in the direction that you wanted. You just have to make switch in your mind to make decision.
Yeah, it's when I look back at it, it's kind of magical.
It looks
how
magical, but
how it all, but I was curious, and I was always connecting the dots. So
Mhm.
I'm self-absorbed. So I said, okay, how does this apply to me? How can I use this? How can, and also I worked with marketers a lot when I was a designer. So I learned marketing by osmosis. And so, okay, how is this going to benefit the customer? How can I communicate this? How do I convey the value of this for the customer? How do I make this so appealing they can't say no? They're going to want to have it.
so you try to build win-win relation in which one side is you as a person, another side is the
Yes.
company, so both are satisfied. And if both sides are satisfied,
Yes.
I'm sure that the result will be positive for both, and the both sides will grow.
Yes.
What, according to your experience, are most common misconception about creativity that people and managers, the businesses, have about creativity? They think that's instant. What is the difference between creativity and innovation? Is is it possible that the company can be innovating company without creativity inside?
Those were a lot of questions, and the last question is a really good one. Can you be innovative without being creative? To some degree, I think yes. If you're changing the color of something, or you're doing micro improvements on something, I don't know if that's necessarily creative. So creativity is to come up with something new, something novel, something that hasn't existed before. So to be creative, you need imagination. And if you only have you have ideas and you don't act on them, you're imaginative, you're not creative. It's only creative if you act on the idea. And also when it comes to business, that creativity also has to be appropriate, and it has to generate value. When you turn that idea into action, that also, when you're implementing the idea, well, then that's also innovation.
So
Yes.
some companies might have creativity but do not have resources to turn it into innovation. Some companies have resources to do innovation but do not have creativity. Is it the case that companies with resources buy creative ideas from companies or persons that do not have resources to make them or translate them into innovation? Like
Yes, I think.
I'm very creative, I have design for something, I don't have
Mhm.
resources to invest, make experiment, whatever, so someone come and buy my creativity,
Yes.
so the company implement as innovation.
Yeah. A
It,
lot of companies do that.
it's pharmaceutical industry, for
Yeah,
instance. It's
even Facebook did. They bought WhatsApp, they bought Instagram. So, those were pretty creative innovations. And then companies buy the services of consultants. And yeah, so certainly you can buy creativity, buy design, buy design, yes. Yeah.
it is possible.
And so to answer your question about misconceptions, sadly, a lot of children are ruined by their teachers in
Mm.
grade 1 or grade 2 when the teacher criticizes them for drawing outside the line. And then, you have to stay inside the line. And the kid's going, and that kills their creativity. It kills their spirit. And then they think they're not creative. And then they think, oh, only artists and musicians and writers are creative, and I'm not creative. I'm an engineer. I'm not creative. And so that's a misconception, because everybody is creative, but we're creative in different ways. So I like to introduce people to what Ned Herman called whole brain thinking. And he studied the thinking processes of thousands of managers at General Electric, and then he divided the brain into 4 parts. We need analytical intelligence. So, we look at the landscape of something and we analyze things, and then we look at, where might be the opportunity. Then we need artistic intelligence or aesthetic intelligence, and that's learning to see the big picture and connect the dots and use intuition and imagination. And as a leader, being able to decode chaos and complexity and make things clear. And but it's also about having big ideas. And then we could have big ideas, but then we might not be aware, or they might be half-baked ideas, or we're not aware of the impact of them. So then we need relational intelligence. And these are the people, often they are in human resources, let's say. So relational intelligence is also has to do with systemics, the impact of an idea on people and the system. What's the impact? And you need relational intelligence for that. Also, that's gut intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence. Then, okay, so that's about refining the idea. Then you need to turn it into action. So we need operational intelligence. So we need people who can work inside the box, work with rules, regulations, with resources, with time, money, everything. So to be innovative, you need all four intelligences. And if you want to have an effective team, you need people who can operate in those intelligence. So we're all whole brain thinkers, otherwise we couldn't function. But we have preferences.
Yeah.
So my weakest one is operational intelligence. And that comes about when I have to be my own travel agent, planning everything. And then thank goodness for ChatGPT, because then I say, okay, make a spreadsheet for me and organize all this for me so I can make a decision.
There are a lot of companies that put innovation in their mission and vision statements.
Yes.
But unfortunately, just
Right.
decorative way how they put it. In
Yeah.
reality, the companies are struggling to be innovative because their corporate culture is not enhancing innovation,
Right.
not stimulating innovation.
Right.
What would you suggest how companies should start, this kind of companies, no matter if it's big or small?
Yeah.
How the leaders in that company should start bringing creativity, innovation, and changing the corporate culture, which is not something that you can do it just like that. So how this process should start with what actions? Sending people on trainings, or just to have a broader picture, to try to learn them to connect the dots, to try to find purpose. What
Yeah,
companies should do to boost innovation?
There's a few things. One, don't punish people if it doesn't work out. Because a lot of innovation doesn't work out. A lot of creativity doesn't. There's a lot of failure.
Mm-hmm.
Edison found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah.
And
Until 1001.
yeah.
Managed.
And so you need to create space for experimentation. And it needs to be safe to take cognitive risks. So that's where design thinking comes in, because they talk about, and you don't come up with ideas just for anything. You need to be clear as the leader about what your objectives are. Where's the company going? Where do you want people to put their brain power towards? Otherwise, people are just going to come up with all kinds of ideas about all kinds of things, and you don't have the resources. So it needs to be focused and directed on the strategic direction of the company. A lot of times people don't even know what that is. A lot of employees don't even know. A lot of executives don't even know. So there has to be a communication between the C-suite and the executives, and so then it's helpful to have a process, a framework to work in. And so design thinking, as an example, is a nice framework. Then research shows that if you focus your creativity and your innovation on the needs of your customer, the unmet needs of your customer, you'll have a greater chance of success. Creativity and innovation was reserved for the R&D lab. And there they are working in splendid isolation. And then, oh, here, we invented this. Do you want it? No, we don't.
Yeah,
So there was a lot of failure. Customers don't know what they want necessarily either. So you have to have that relational intelligence to figure out, what are they struggling with? What are their pain points? What's missing? What's taking them too long to do? and then come up with innovations to serve the customer.
Yes, the best companies are those that are problem solvers of the customer. So you should know what problems they are facing, and you design a product or service that is solving their problem. And in this case, you are not a company that try to sell, but you are problem solver and helper in their life. And you mentioned several times design thinking. Can you tell us more about that and how this design thinking can help modern managers to more efficiently and successfully lead their companies?
First of all, it's to set an intention that you're going to design a solution. Design is intentional. Design is also optimistic. It's leading to us to a preferred future. What is it that we want to create? So it's not like, for me, design isn't necessarily problem solving. It's also creating an ideal, a preferred future, or creating something that improves quality of life for people and the planet. And actually, that's something I like to say to companies wherever I go. It's like the purpose of being in business isn't just to make a profit, it's to improve quality of life for your customer and also for the planet. We have to pay attention to that too. So it starts with intention, then empathy, getting to know whoever your target market is. And if you're in nonprofit, the people you serve. If you're in government, the people you serve. What are the unmet needs? It's also about creating like a wow product, like Steve Jobs did with Apple. People didn't know they needed an iPad, but he created something so seductive and so compelling. It's like, oh my God, I have to have that. So there's that element too. It's about discovering. With empathy, you have the curiosity too to discover the opportunity. When you discover the opportunity, you frame the opportunity, and with that framing, framing could be people-centered, it could be technology-centered, it could be a segment of the market. Then you generate ideas, and then you build a rough prototype. So when I do workshops with groups, I have them go through a problem-solving process, an ideation process. Okay, now build a prototype to show us what you mean. So it could be visual, it could be on video, and then I have people working with clay and pipe cleaners, and they're sort of like little sculptures, not technical at all. And then it's show and tell. So then I also teach people how to present their idea using whole brain thinking. And so it's like, okay, here's the context, here's the big idea, here's how it adds value, and here's how we're going to put into action. So when you have that framework, that's how you can communicate to your boss in 2 minutes or less, because the boss doesn't have time to hear you go blah, 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 with all the details. And also, when you are in a company, it's good to have more than one idea, because it's easy to say no to one idea. It's harder to say no to 3.
Yeah, to this you will give chance at least to one of these 3.
Yeah. And it's also good to involve your boss or the decision makers, let's say. Involve them in the process. I learned that when I was in design and offering solutions in doing marketing communications. And I'd say, well, would you prefer this here, over here? Get them involved, because when you are involved in the ideation process, they call it the IKEA effect. When you're involved in the creation, you have more love for it, and you're going to fight for it. You're going to be more you're going to be less likely to dismiss it.
Yes, you have ownership.
Yeah, you have ownership.
Actually,
it's really important to have ownership, and so as a leader, you also need to give your team ownership.
And to give purpose to the team,
Yes.
that you are doing something good for the society,
Exactly.
for the company.
Exactly.
So I agree with you, and it's in line with circular economy. Actually, the 3 P's is not profit on the only bottom line as so far it was of every company, but the other 2 P's is planet and people. So what we do, no matter if it's a service or production company or government, we should take care also not just to have profit, but what is our impact on better living of people around us, of our customers, which is people and the planet, which we are using the resources of the planet. You travel a lot. You had trainings all around the world, let's say. Can you realize that there is a cultural differences towards creativity? I mean, in some countries, creativity is stimulated even you make wrong ideas or are not successful. Some countries are more prone to doom this that are failing. So, for instance, in Macedonia, you are quite. I think you are first time here. Maybe it's too early to ask you, but can you
I
compare?
just got here last night.
Yeah,
so.
can you? Is there any difference between European, let's say, corporate culture and American corporate culture in terms of creativity and innovation?
That's a good question. I'll answer it in a different way. I don't know if I can answer it the way you asked. I would say what I noticed is that the people who are more educated do better in creativity. They didn't just learn math and engineering and science. They also learned creative writing. Maybe they studied art. They studied philosophy. They studied the humanities. They studied literature. They had a
general knowledge.
General knowledge. The better the general knowledge, the better they can generate ideas and also ask questions. The more educated people know how to ask good questions. So that's the difference that I have seen. And also I have noticed, I get people painting, people in business. I have them paint conversations instead of speaking. And then after they paint the conversation with each other, they have to decode what they just talked about, because the painting has to be abstract. They can't just draw a face in a house and so on. It has to be abstract. And then they have to figure out what they were actually talking about. When I tell them that, they laugh. But, then they decode. And then I also ask them to paint, how do they see their world right now? And what do you see as the issue? And then what would be the ideal? And paint that. Then it doesn't have to be abstract. And when they talk about that, when they have conversations, because the art in these sessions is not about the painting, it's about the conversation. So the art creates a climate of freedom and trust. Those are two things that you need to have in place for people to express them, to feel safe. To express themselves creatively.
Create trust between.
Because a lot of times people are afraid to put forward an idea because they'll be swatted like a fly. And so they start talking. So the art is in the conversation. And when they start talking, they're sharing values. So this is what I've noticed from traveling all over the world, is that when we see that we have common values with each other, we trust each other.
It's much easier to make a deal or whatever, to make some common solution.
Right.
That is will win-win.
So, so business is relational.
Definitely.
No relationship, no business. And what is the root of relationship? Conversation.
And trust.
And trust.
Build it through this conversation.
Yes.
It could be even by drawings, as you did. You mentioned education, that more educated people are more creative. If you have a chance to change education system, what would you change? In general, you don't know our education system domestic, but let's say in Canada, is it stimulating creativity? Because I guess our education system is more teaching facts, discipline, than creativity. What would you change?
That's how I learned. I had a colonial education in Canada. Just follow the rules.
Yes.
That's why it was so exciting to go to California and learn how to be an artist, because I was not following the rules. And also, the United States does not give people a colonial education. Because they don't have a colonial mindset. It's interesting you ask that, because when I was flying to Italy from London, I was sitting next to a teacher, and she was talking about how bad it is in education in Northern England. And she herself seemed so resigned. It's really bad, but that's the system. We can't change anything. And then I was talking to parents I was staying with friends near Venice, and I was talking to parents there, and the education is pretty bad. And yeah, and and they're at risk of bringing in fascism again. And they're all, but the kids aren't engaged. And well, they're being fed facts and they're bored. And so I'll just give you a contrast, because I went back to the school where I went in Montreal, and it's changed dramatically. So it was a few years ago, the principal of the school went to the CEOs of companies in Montreal and said, "What are you looking for in an employee?" "Well, we're looking for problem solvers. We're looking for collaborators. We're looking for leaders. We're looking for team builders."
Integrity, I guess.
And yeah, and so they built that into the curriculum. So there are projects that they have to do, and they have to do it as a team. And they have to learn to get along with each other.
Like in companies later on.
Exactly. So, and it's action-based learning. And we need to also ask the kids, what are they interested in? Yes, they have to cover the basics, but we also have to nurture their curiosity. So that's what I would change. I would add those changes. It's like, what is it that business is looking for, or government? What are employers looking for? Not to turn people into technicians, but to turn them into collaborators, problem solvers, creators, makers, designers,
Stimulate them to
and
think out of
stimulate
box,
them.
not
And
according to the rules always.
learn how to connect the dots, because to me that's really exciting.
Yes, education is important. We mentioned several times, but according your experience, because you are expert in creative leadership, so creative leaders are born and then later on can be educated to be excellent in what they do, or you can through education you can become a creative leader. What is the difference between excellent creative leader and average creative leader? Or it's not, maybe, is it only creative without leader, or leader without creation? Will you experience what have you faced these situations, these characters?
There are some board leaders for sure, but anybody can learn to be a leader. It takes self-confidence, it takes practice, it takes mentorship, guidance, coaching. And actually, we're all leaders in that we lead ourselves. We are leaders of our own lives. And so to be a creative leader, I think there's two kinds of creative leaders. There's the one kind who's creative and they see a vision. They've got a vision, they've got a potent point of view, and they rally people around them to follow them and create that vision. Then there's another kind of creative leader where you create you create the space and the resources for people to create and be their best. And there was a film director, and I can't remember his name right now, but he said, actually, the role of the leader is to see more in your people and see that they can do even better than they thought they could. So it's to create the conditions for people to do their best. That's a creative leader.
Last week, I think, I was on a seminar and we discussed with one of my colleagues, and he said there are two types of leaders. Leaders that create followers and leaders that create leaders. So probably the second one is that gives space to others to grow as well and become leaders. And for the companies, if you have such a leader that create leaders inside these companies, probably are the most successful compared with those that just create followers. Or in the long run, you don't... in the long run, these companies for sure will be better positioned than those that just create followers. And for the final, let's say, what what would be your advice to the young professionals that just coming out of university and they are in front of their careers? Some of them will be leaders probably, creative or not creative, creating leaders or just creating followers. But what would you be your advice to these young people at 22, 25 that just starting their professional careers?
Follow your curiosity. And then what you're curious about might not be something that will lead you to earn a living, but it'll animate your soul. And so it's good to have an avocation as well as a vocation. So they've done studies on Nobel Prize winning scientists, and a high percentage of these Nobel Prize winning scientists had an interest in the arts, that they participated in the arts, either painting or music or poetry or writing. And these are the kinds of things that awaken the aesthetic intelligence part of your brain. And so even if you go into a really technical area, it's important to have that part of your brain activated and to keep it alive, and to always be connecting the dots. Always look for practice observation skills, experiment. And one thing I did when I was starting my career was I joined professional organizations, and I stepped up. I volunteered in leadership roles. And I thought, well, if I screw up, it's not going to destroy my career because I'm just volunteering. But there were people who were experienced who could help me and support me. So that's how I learned to be a leader, is through volunteering. And you could also volunteer in your company. You can tell your boss, I'm interested in this. And, if there's a project coming up, say, I would like to participate in that project. So even if it's more work than you're
paid for.
Volunteer, make yourself known.
And try to grow together with the company.
Yes.
And follow the dreams.
Always be connecting the dots. Look at how things interconnect. Look for the opportunity. Look for, that's actually Steve Jobs said it. One of the secrets to creativity is just connecting. One thing connects to another. And what innovators and scientists and artists and entrepreneurs have in common is the ability to connect the dots between disparate data and see what other people don't see. So make connections that other people wouldn't even think of.
And that's bottom line, probably, is passion to want to do that. Some people have this passion, some just keep it.
That's why I say you have to keep your curiosity alive.
I fully agree.
And I was listening. I had the opportunity to attend a talk by Douglas Copeland, who is one of the most creative people in Canada. He wrote the book Generation X, which defined that generation. He wrote Microserfs. He's also an artist, and he's been an advisor on the futurism to Steven Spielberg even. And when I heard him talk about his process, I noticed he was asking, what if? He talks to himself. What if I did this? Oh, what if I da-da-da-da? So what if? He asks that question more often than any other question. And I think that's a really good question to stimulate creativity, is what if? And then when you're getting into innovation, then what wows? What's the wow idea?
What if? So a lot of people are afraid to ask that question, and that they just follow the status quo. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your experience, your knowledge with us and with the audience of Čekor napred with М6. So it was pleasure, and hope you will have a pleasant stay in our country, and you will have good impressions. And I'm sure we are going to satisfy your curiosity in terms of everything that you're going to see in the following days. Thank you.
Thank you.